Little Jimmy was kneeling down at his bedside with his mother and saying his evening prayers with his litany of all the people he wanted to pray for. And his mother asked him after he completed the prayer, "Why didn't you pray for your brother Danny?" He had mentioned everybody else, but he didn't mention Danny. And he says, "I'm not going to ask God to bless Danny because he hit me." And his mother said, "Don't you remember that Jesus said you have to forgive your enemies?" And he looked at his mother and he said, "Well, that's just the problem. He's not my enemy, he's my brother." Sometimes the hardest people to forgive are the closest ones to us. That enemy in a faraway place, well, that's not really so hard. Sometimes. There was one woman who buried her husband and put on his headstone, "Gone, but not forgiven." How we hold on to things, don't we? There is the problem. Holding on to these matters that bring bitterness to the soul. Now, C.S. Lewis spoke about a distinction between excusing and forgiving. They're very different. You know, you bump into somebody at the store, "Oh, excuse me." "Oh, yes, you're excused," right? That's typically accidental, it's not intentional. But the wounds that are inflicted intentionally, that is much deeper and much harder for us to deal with. I want to tell you the story of a boy who grew up with a mother who had just lost her husband. He didn't die, he just abandoned them. She had 3 children. Eddie was the youngest of the 3, a 7-year-old. They were in the car, the 3 boys and their mother. And at a certain stop, she was just filled with rage at what had happened. Now she's trying to feed 3 children. She's got a poor job. She's lost the husband. And she turns around in her rage and she strikes Eddie, the 7-year-old. And this is what she said. "You, I never wanted you. The only reason I had you was to keep your father. But then he left anyway. I hate you." You can imagine how this scarred Eddie. In fact, later on when he was talking to a counselor, he said that that played over in his mind thousands of times. Thousands of times that played in his mind. But he said this years later. "Recently, I put myself in my mother's shoes. Here she was, a high school graduate, with no money, no job, and a family to support. I realized how lonely and depressed she must have felt. I thought of the anger and the pain that must have been there. And I thought of how much I reminded her of the failure of her young hopes. And so one day I decided to visit her and talk to her. I told her that I understood her feelings and that I loved her just the same. She broke down, and we wept in each other's arms for what seemed to be hours. It was the beginning of a new life for me and for her." Unquote. How does someone do that? How do you forgive someone who has wounded you so deeply that it plays thousands of times? Gone but not forgiven, as was written on that epitaph? God forbid. Because the person who is most wounded carries that scar until there is a healing. And you will never know the liberty of the children of God, the freedom of the children of God, if you bear that unhealed wound. Jesus Christ took all the sins of the world. He took that in his wounds. But we know his wounds are glorified. There is risen glory that comes from his wounds. So the way we have to do this, forgiveness is a two-step process, at least two steps. The first step is willing to forgive. It's a choice. I choose to forgive in the name of Jesus Christ, as this young man did as he forgave his mother. In that deep wound, he went to his mother. He chose to go to see his mother, with whom he had been estranged all those years. He chose to go and see his mother. He chose to forgive her. Now you might say the right order of matters would have been that mother would have gone to him and asked for forgiveness, but that wasn't the way it happened. He took the first step, the wounded soul. He took the first step and asked, or expressed his understanding of her situation and forgave her. What a grace. The second part of healing of the wounds is to ask the Lord to come and heal my wounds. Now those wounds can be in the memory, like what was playing in his memory. Lord, heal my memories. Right? That's an extremely important part of things, because people will say, well, okay, I did what you said, Father. I went before the altar of God, or I went before a crucifix and I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, I forgive so-and-so for such and such. But I still hurt. I still have bad feelings towards that person. Then you must go to step 2 and pray for healing. Ask the Lord, who is the ultimate healer, who took all the sins of the world and chooses to heal the world if we ask, if we seek, if we knock. And he will then bless us. There was a beautiful meditation that Mother Teresa, St. Teresa of Calcutta, would keep in her bedroom called Anyway. And I think it brings us right to the point. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. When you spend years building, someone could destroy it overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it's between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway.